Welcome to episode 4 of Quick Theological Thoughts, which I don't seem to be making very quick. But anyway, welcome back. I'm Howard Fisher, and today I want to interact with a video that my daughter sent me. It's kind of fun. How do you interact with these kind of things? So let's pull up the video and see if we can make this work here and share it. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is try to interact with this video little by little as we go. So here we go.
What if water is God?
Okay, great question. What if water is God? What if dirt were God? What if the sun were God, or the moon were God, or the ocean was God, or the sky, or the trees, or the corn? It doesn't matter. Really, it's a form of pantheism, right? That God is the creation itself. And once you say that, well, there's where people get the idea of we're all divine within. But let's try to see what kind of answer we get here, and we'll go from there.
Then that would mean God is both in us and all around us. That God is both above and below
Right,
us.
so God is in us, all around us, above us. Well, why would we restrict that to water? Why not dirt? No dirt on the moon. So we no matter in the sun. Why isn't God light? Light's above us, light's below us. We can kind of do that with anything. But I'm going to take it that this guy is possibly a Christian who's going ahead and running with this. He's like, okay, what if God were water? Well, he's going to take Christian ideas, Christian thoughts, and he's going to try to use water as an analogy or an illustration to explain who God is. The problem with this is that we end up getting it backwards. We're starting with the creature and working our way back to God. And although we can see from the creation attributes of God, ultimately it's God who explains the creation, not the other way around. And so we should start with monotheism, biblical Trinitarian monotheism, and work our way forward, because that's the revelation God has given to us. God is not of the creation. God is the creator. There's the creator-creature distinction, and if we don't start there, we're going to fall into error. But let's just press on. He's obviously trying to run with this analogy. If God were water, he's in us, he's all around us. Depending what you mean by in us, is God really in us? Well, he holds all things together, so there's a sense in which God is close. But he's using water in a way that's not a biblical way to use it. And saying that God is really a part of us, he's who we are. As sinners, no. We're gonna have to overlook that one.
Why a woman's water breaks when we're born.
I got to be honest. Why a woman's water breaks when we're born? Not quite sure what he means by that, other than maybe water is giving life. As if the baby weren't. These are all illustrations. So okay, we'll cut some slack here, but there's no end to that, right? You can do that with anything. You can do that with mud. Frogs come out of mud, right? Flies come out of mud, so we used to think. So mud must be God.
And why some religions observe the ritual of baptism.
Why do some religions observe the ritual of baptism? Here's where a Christian man can use water as an illustration, where the New Testament even does this, right? Or the Old Testament even. The Spirit of God hovered above the waters at the creation. So water is clearly important to life, and the Spirit of God hovered above the waters, giving life. Okay, that's good. But in the New Testament, we're told that water gives life, washes us, cleanses us. But we're also told in the Bible that water also brings about judgment. Noah's flood, water destroyed everything. If it weren't for the preservation of God by having an ark built and putting 8 souls into that ark, those lives would have been washed away. So water has both the ability to give life and the ability to take it. And it's the ability at creation to give life and the ability at judgment day to destroy life. So we have to be careful in isolating water in that way.
But if water was God, then that would mean that God has no gender, that God takes the shape of whatever container God appears
Right, so
in.
God has no gender and he's shapeless. Well, yeah, you can use that as an analogy or an illustration that God is shapeless. But the Bible tells us God is spirit. Oh, okay, so it's something other altogether, right? So a spirit, we're not told what the shape of a spirit is, right? So we have to recognize that the most water can do for us is be an illustration. And that's as far as it can go. We're working backwards, and if we're not careful, we're putting into the minds of people that the creation is the source of how we understand God, and it's actually God who gives us the understanding through creation. It's the other way around.
Which would explain why we have so many different belief
No,
systems.
that's not the explanation of why we have so many different belief systems. So I forgot to answer the question of gender, right? So God is neither male nor female. God uses the language in the Bible to explain to us his relationship to us. God creates Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, we are told in the New Testament, is a type, is a foreshadowing, an illustration of Jesus Christ and the church. We're also told all throughout the Bible that God is he and the creation is she. That's how God relates to us. Yeah, obviously God is not a male, God is not a female, but God is using the gender roles that we have in creation to explain how he relates to us, not biologically speaking, but how he relates to us as the creator versus the creature. So what if, I need to back up here, what if,
Different belief systems.
right, so why do we have these different belief systems? So at creation, God makes Adam, and he makes him in a relationship, a covenantal relationship. Adam is to represent God in the creation. He is God's vice regent. Male and female, God creates mankind. There's a purpose to it, to go and reproduce, multiply, fill the earth, exercise dominion over the whole over the whole thing. So when God does this with Adam, he writes within his heart the law of God. So the law of God goes out everywhere. That's why you have similarities in religions all over, in cultures all over, in societies all over the world. You can see, thou shalt not murder. Well, where'd they get that from? It's because it's written upon the heart, because they are image bearers of God. Why do we have perversions of everything? Because we're sinners. We're not neutral towards God. We are sinners that have filled the earth. We know who God is, and yet we suppress that knowledge in wickedness, in unrighteousness. And so that's why you have similarities in religions, but you also have massive differences in religions, because man does not accept the revelation that God has given to us. And so it is the Christian's job to take the revelation that God has given to us about who he is and take that revelation to the world. And we no longer have an excuse. God will no longer, according to Acts chapter 17, God has overlooked our ignorance in the past, but he has raised Jesus Christ from the dead, the judge of all mankind. And because he has demonstrated that Jesus is now Lord and King of kings and Lord of lords, we are now left without an excuse. We must believe in the resurrection. Jesus is the head of the new human race, and that new human race will inherit heaven and earth. That's why all mankind sees God's law in some way or another. It's also why Christians say Jesus is the only way, the truth, and the life, because Jesus is fulfilling the law that Adam did not do. Jesus is fulfilling the covenant that Adam broke. So now we have a new covenant, and Jesus has now established it, and all creation is now his.
Which begs the question, what is the spiritual significance of poisoning the water in Flint, Michigan, or the oil burning in the Gulf of Mexico, or the large islands of garbage floating in the Pacific Ocean?
All right, so what's the significance of pollution? All right, so if the creation is God, then yeah, I guess pollution might have some kind of significance, but why? Are we told that pollution is bad? Pollution is a subjective thing, or it can be. If I have a glass of water and I need to drink and I'm very thirsty and I go to drink it, and somebody walks along and pours some salt in it, it's pollution. It's polluted. I can't drink the water anymore. But is it polluted for him? Well, if he was going to use that water to drink it, sure. But what if that person put salt in it because they were trying to make a saline solution because they were going to do a nasal rinse? Is it polluted? All right, so we need to set, if we're going to look at the problem of pollution, then we need to set it up in a biblical manner, in a biblical fashion. Property rights, that whole thing. If we're going to, pollute our neighbor's water, then we're going to pay for it. And so those kinds of things we have to take into consideration.
If God was water, would that not mean that every natural place is holy, that every thunderstorm was a church without walls, that when the rain falls, it's an act of God's death giving life? And
No. No. Every place is holy if God makes it holy. God says the whole earth is his, and that's fine. But why is it his? It's his because Jesus Christ purchased it. We can't say that because water is in us, so therefore we're holy, or the church is holy. The church is holy because Jesus Christ purchased the church with his own blood. Not every human being is in the church. So water is in every human being, but that doesn't make everybody holy. God determines what is and is not holy in whatever sense that he is meaning by it. God has taken a world full of sinners, and he's taken out of that world sinners and redeemed them. And those sinners are now in the church that Jesus Christ purchased with his own blood. Received the forgiveness of sins, and we are God's holy and chosen people. That's different.
Evaporates again is the day of resurrection.
All right. So water coming down, evaporating, and then going back up in the clouds is a symbol of resurrection. Again, if you're going to use water as an illustration, fine. But let's use biblical illustrations that are much more consistent. If you're going to talk about the resurrection, let's look at what the Apostle Paul uses. He talks about seeds, maybe an apple seed, an orange seed, an oak tree seed. You plant it to the ground, it quote-unquote dies. Water could come down and water it, fine, but the seed itself dies and then grows into something spectacular. The human body is going to die, and on the day of the resurrection is going to be raised from the dead. The Christian that dies is going to be raised from being a mortal to being an immortal person who will live forever in a resurrected body. Water I don't even know how you get that with the illustration of water. Plants, according to the New Testament, are much better illustration by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 15.
And life itself, which is a test of learning how to be and flow like water, how to give life to other people, and how to refresh their spirits and quench their thirst with your presence.
Okay. So, water, it can be used to illustrate how we should refresh one another, encourage one another, do those kinds of things. That's wonderful. This guy is using water as an illustration, and when pushed to the tilt, it tilts. Used properly, I think you can do that, and the New Testament does that. Water. The Spirit of God renews us, regenerates us, and it uses the term of wind and water with the Holy Spirit all the time. Great illustrations, the New Testament uses it. We can't push it too far. We need to start with, again, we need to go back to, what does God reveal? What does God say? What does God speak to us about who he is? He's told us. He's told us he's the creator, we are the creature. We start with biblical Trinitarian monotheism, and we work our way out from there. If we start with the creation and work our way back to God, we're going to start with our sin, we're going to start with ourselves, we're going to start with our sinful selves, and we're going to come to all kinds of erroneous conclusions. We have to start with what God has given to us. He's given to us the scriptures, he's given to us Jesus Christ, he's given to us his prophets, his apostles, and that's where we need to go. We need to start with his word, his revelation, and move out from there. Well, enjoy your day.